And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Monday, December 4th, 2017. Second King Report live from the Chanigung studios. To all the kings and queens of the kingdom of God, good morning. It is 7:11 in a.m. We're joined now with Mr. Kevin McCrudden, international author and speaker, president of Motivate America Incorporated, founder of National Motivation and Inspiration Day, creator of the American Motivational Awards, a former professional soccer player and publisher of Soccer Long Island Magazine, and founder of the Long Island Soccer Player Hall of Fame. Mr. McCrudden is an international author, speaker, and founder of National Motivation and Inspiration Day, which was passed by the United States Congress after the tragic events of 9/11/2001. January 2nd is also acknowledged as National Motivation and Inspiration Day in New York State, and January is Motivation and Inspiration Month. He's also known as Mr. Motivation and America's Chief Motivation Officer. His book, Who Are You? Become the Very Best You Can Be, introduces the most significant addition to Maslow's hierarchy of needs in 60 years, and his 7 audiobooks have sold in over 30 countries around the world. His upcoming book combines his 21st century multi-dimensional hierarchy of needs with EQ, emotional intelligence, and IQ, intelligence quotient. He speaks on topics of motivation, inspiration management, leadership, sales, sports, soccer, emotional intelligence, and performance to corporations, universities, students, and athletes. He's appeared on Fox News, Fox and Friends, and ABC News in New York, as well as international radio and TV programs, and is a TV and radio host himself. Thank you, Mr. McCrudden, for joining us this morning. So great to meet you.
Oh, my honor.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Inspiration and Motivation Day, which was passed by the U.S. Congress after 9/11.
I think the most important thing is that and certainly for all of your audience and people that listen to you, know the importance of motivation and inspiration in their lives. And after 9/11, the tragic events of 9/11, obviously we all saw the tragedy, but what I also saw was the humanity, how amazing people were in coming together and helping each other. And since 9/11, we've seen it over and over again. At times of tragedy, we come together as a force for good. And in many cases, whether it be responding to natural disasters or to man-made disasters, we always seem to come together. So that was the inspiration for me to create National Motivation and Inspiration Day, which Congress passed immediately, and we've had passed by New York State and acknowledged on January 2nd of every single year. So it's the first day of the year. It's the first opportunity to set goals and achieve or set your achievement for every single year, and that's the intent of National Motivation and Inspiration Day.
Well, that's amazing because, you're talking about bringing people together. That's such an important thing, especially at this time where we're becoming so balkanized politically, and the left is becoming more radical left, the right is becoming more, separated from, and people forget the humanity in between. And of course, even though we have political differences, still, that's the beauty of America. We were at one stage, we were supposed to be able to have political differences, but still get along and be, courteous, etc. But of course, you have all these crazy, international funders of domestic terrorism and Antifa that are beating up Christians, that are just praying on the streets. So that's just escalating. There's an escalation within the whole political landscape. But people do need to come together again as Americans, just united around, freedom and liberty and free association, free markets, etc. I mean, what is so hard for, us to be united in that way?
Yeah, I think that's what's difficult is people have different agendas and people, there is a force out there that's trying to divide us. And that divisiveness has become apparent in our media, has become apparent in America, has become apparent with our children. I think this divisiveness really is hurting us in a lot of ways.
And isn't there a lot of money behind this too? Because you're absolutely right. There's so many race hustlers nowadays, race identity politics, gender politics, all this kind of, and we know that there's tons of money that's backing these kind of divisive politics that are seeking to balkanize people, to divide man and woman, divide families, divide, the household, to divide and conquer, essentially break up the constituent parts of a rather united America, to then go after those smaller parts, take each one out. It's easier to take out smaller pieces and then take down the country as a whole. There's a lot of money behind this too.
Well, sure. There's plenty of money to move any sort of group of people, right? It takes money and power to influence things. But I think there's a faulty narrative there, in the sense that there is no destroying America. America is bigger than any one concept or idea. It is about freedom, and around the world, America stands for something. There is no way to destroy what America stands for.
Well, it's amazing, because in America, you really have a situation where the normal citizen can literally be a king. I mean, we have the castle doctrine, of course, all those kind of things. But if you think about it, in the past, the kingdoms of the past, the kings had the right to property. They had the right to private property and to have their kingdom. They had the right to defend that private property with arms, etc. But that was never given to the serf class or the slave class or the lower classes. But for the first time, literally in history, you have a situation where in America, the normal man and the normal woman can be a king and a queen. I mean, literally, we've lost a lot of that, of course, but we literally have the rights that were formerly only designated to kings and queens.
Well, I think historically, the idea is that we do have so many freedoms in America. We are free to essentially call ourselves or label ourselves whatever we want. And we are free to choose our religious beliefs, our spiritual beliefs, who we associate ourselves with. We do have to follow the laws of America, but we certainly are free to make those daily choices and to live an inspired life. And that's what I focus on, is helping people be motivated to live inspired lives, because there are a lot of people, when you talk about the political environment and this pressure and this divisiveness, what it's actually doing is wearing a lot of people down. It's just making them tired. And what I'm trying to do is motivate and inspire people. To your point, we all have a calling of being kings or queens, or being able to live our own lives and live inspired lives. We just need that fire, that ignition, that motivation to feel free to live our lives. And unfortunately, this divisiveness, I think, is wearing a lot of people down.
Wow, that's so important, because people want to stand. They want to fight the good fight. They want to stand up for righteousness. They want to stand up for the unborn children. They want to stand up for really things that really do make a difference. You're absolutely right. Worn down, it's like you're fighting like this waterfall that keeps cascading upon you. You're trying to climb this thing, and it's like this endless. It's like this.
I like the analogy.
How do we, in terms of your expertise, in terms of motivation, how do we keep ourselves motivated? How do you keep yourself motivated amidst this cascading, barrage?
Well, I think part of it is how much time we spend with it. I think you have to remember, on a daily basis, many of the things that are being discussed in the media, in Washington, in our state capitals, many of the things aren't things that really directly influence us. On a daily basis, what we want to do is we want to love our spouses, we want to love our children, we want to love ourselves, we want to contribute to community and society. And how do we do that? How do we best do that? And the best way of doing that is being our very best selves. So being positive and energetic and enthusiastic about our own lives and what we contribute in our communities. So I think that's really the best way for us to focus. When we think about sitting and listening to, CNN or MSNBC or Fox, when you're sitting and listening to these programs, and to your point, I love the analogy, this onslaught, this constant flow of water that seems like it's impossible to fight. It can be overwhelming. And I think, frankly, there's a lot of people that feel overwhelmed by all this information, because now we have this global information that's coming in. It's just too much. It's too much to take in at one time, I think. So I think it's about your personal life. It's about your personal choices. And the beauty of America is we can't hold other people accountable to the way we live. All we can choose to do is live our lives the best that we can every day. And that's what we're responsible for, is our own callings, our own thoughts, our own actions, our own words, what we say to hurt other people. That's what we have control over.
Fascinating. Dr. Jordan Peterson of the University of Toronto, Professor Emeritus of Psychology up there, talks about, even though he's an atheist or a non-Christian, he talks about the value of Judeo-Christian values that has undergirded our whole jurisprudence method, our whole anthropology, how we see, the divinity within a person. So even though they're a criminal, we'll still, have them be innocent till proven guilty. Men and women equal before the law. Some other ideologies, like, for example, Islam, see women have only 50% before the law. But for example, in Judeo-Christianity, because men and women are made in the image of God, not just men, even though feminists always say Christianity is patriarchal, it's right there in Genesis. Man and woman are made in the image of God, and that's why they're equal before the law. You know, and our jurisprudence being based on the idea of innocent to proven guilty, that even a criminal is worthy of human dignity and respect, and cannot just be, punished for allegations, etc. How has it harmed America from falling away from these kind of core spiritual precepts and core principles which undergird our Constitution, undergird our idea of ourselves in the universe, that we have inalienable rights given to us by God, our Creator? I mean, I don't know if you're a religious person, but like, how important are these things for our lives and our motivation, our inspiration?
I love that. And to your point, these Judeo belief systems are a part of our foundation, right? Our founding fathers, they did bring those beliefs from Europe to America. And we do have those fundamental, quote unquote, values. Not everybody has the same values because not everyone came from the same place, right? So now that we have a global community, this melting pot in America, we do have different belief systems that live here and have influences here. However, our foundation is still on those core beliefs and those values. So when we ask people to have a belief in God, 96% of the population of the world believes in God. We just believe different versions of it. And I think that's where we're being divided and conquered. I have another project coming out called The Light of Man, where I talk a bit about this, is that God in its divinity is literally in every human being and every living thing. And really what it's about is believing that in ourselves, that God is and divinity is not something that is external, although it's there. It's also internal. It's a part of us. It's a part of who we are and what we are. And we believe that every single day. I think that we would carry ourselves differently. We would act differently. To much of your audience and some of this, your conversations is about spirituality and about religion. I divide the two of them and talk more about spirituality and people's awareness as well as their responsibility. So when we think about the founding fathers and a belief in God and that America is found, in God we trust. We do believe in God, but 96% of the world believes in God. And we believe in equal rights and we believe in equal access. However, when we look at TV and someone's accused of something, unfortunately, let's say a Matt Lauer, you know what? He is essentially guilty as accused. And it would be almost impossible for him to carry on a media campaign to defend himself or defend what he's done and really get a fair calling about everything that's occurred, even though some of the accusations are false. So we do live in a society where people are guilty as accused, and it's very difficult to try and defend themselves.
Boy, that is really dangerous because, it's almost like the media wants this whole guilty as accused, as you say, because in the end, they want to accuse President Trump of it. They've already tried to accuse him as being, having allegations of sexual assault on other women when all those cases turned out to be Jane Doe's and totally false. I mean, but it almost seems like they want to ramp this up and get everybody sort of going on this guilty if you're accused and not have your day in court, or like Nancy Pelosi coming on and saying, oh, for Conyers, who was a Democrat, he should have his day in court. But Roy Moore, who's had allegations against him, he is a child molester without any day in court. I mean, you have this doublespeak always given by the media, the propaganda, the politicians, etc. And they're making Americans forget that, hey, wait a minute, folks, we're about innocent till proven guilty. All these people need to have their day in court and evidence has to be presented.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think everybody's so eager to fill the airwaves. Back in the 1920s, I have a journalism background. Obviously, back in the 1920s, there was yellow journalism from Hearst, and it was about headlines. It was about selling newspapers. And now it's about selling TV shows. It's about selling airtime. And, as we're going back and forth, I can see the picture of myself, and it's like this talking head. And back in the 70s and 80s, we talked about this idea of talking heads. That's what media has become. Media has just become these talking heads that are just talking garbage at people, and they're just making accusation after accusation. And you're right. People aren't necessarily being given the fair opportunity to defend themselves or to at least get their day in court. They're essentially guilty before they ever get a chance.
Well, this is what's so interesting, because even in Operation Mockingbird, which was a CIA operation during the Cold War, where they worked with different newsrooms and news agencies to basically, curtail propaganda is what they were saying. But those relationships, and even the LA Times has reported on this, those relationships continued on. And the CIA has had continual tremendous influence and leverage upon these news agency groups. And you can see how even CNN or MSNBC, of course, even Fox sometimes, how much they were against the president. They were claiming, the New York Times was claiming that Hillary had a 98% chance of winning, and Trump had a 2%. I mean, they were just completely doing propaganda but it's like, how can you trust the mainstream media? And these are your agents of information, supposedly. Thank goodness they're trying to censor the internet. They're trying to censor conservative voices. They're trying to get rid of people who have opposite views. I mean, it's so crazy.
Yeah, I think what's difficult is, I don't get into politics too much because motivation, inspiration is separate from that. However, people are motivated by politics. And what I find interesting in this argument, all of these news agencies, there's really very simple conversation, and the whole dialogue would actually end. As of right now, there is absolutely no proof that Russia actually changed one vote on one machine on one computer in America. So there's no proof of that. However, they keep on talking about Russia's influence, and you just brought up a publicity machine that essentially was saying Hillary Clinton, it was a 98% chance that she was going to win. And it was all over the place. And somehow the media was trying to convince people that they shouldn't even bother going voting because Trump didn't stand a chance. And somehow that's not seen as negative propaganda against either Republicans or conservatives, or, in this case, it was against Trump. And it's the same thing, whether it be Russia influencing people on the internet by giving them reasons why they shouldn't vote for Hillary. Our own American journalism was focusing on essentially somehow defeating Donald Trump. And the only thing to come out of the emails that is tangible was the conspiracy of the Democratic National Committee, and that they were essentially, screwing Bernie Sanders. That's the only factual information to actually come out of all of those emails, but nobody wants to talk about it. So I think it's about information and how they manipulate it and how they twist it. That's why I want people to get away from it. Get away from all the dialogue, get away from all the accusations. What I typically do in most of my programs is I ask people to point their fingers at me or at other people. And when you point your finger at other people, there's three fingers pointing back at you. It's about accountability. We all have our own accountability. And if we lived our lives more like that, where we pointed at ourselves as opposed to pointing at others, we would all live probably a better life.
Fascinating. Freedom and responsibility and accountability, as you say. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more with Mr. McCrudden. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Joby Gorgas with Magnum Research. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our new L5 and 44 mag. This is our 5-inch model, lightweight model. It's got an aluminum grip frame, shaving down the weight so that we can get it under 50 ounces so that it's New York legal. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to properly hold the L5 for function. When shooting a Desert Eagle, you want to make sure that your dominant arm is locked out, pushing back into the back of the grip. Your secondary hand is holding around the front of the grip to keep the muzzle flip down. This gives you a good firm hold for proper cycling. We got to remember that the Desert Eagle is a gas-operated rotating bolt semi-automatic pistol, not unlike an AR system. I also want to talk to you about the stance for shooting the Desert Eagle. When shooting the Desert Eagle, you need a good firm base, so you want to step into your direction, get that arm locked, that support hand on, and lean forward into it so that you can handle that recoil.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Monday, December 4th, 2017, broadcasting to all the kings and queens of the kingdom of God. We're here with Kevin McCrudden, international author and speaker and president of Motivate America Incorporated. Now, Kevin, during the break, we were talking about your experience as a professional athlete, as a professional soccer player. And I was sharing my experience when I was training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At one point, I was training in Brazil, and I saw these guys in the dojo after we were training, who were professional soccer players, and they were dribbling on their foot a tennis ball. I mean, up and down like 40, 50 times, boom, boom. I was blown away the level of control they had.
Some of them are fascinating. Fascinating, the amount of control they have with their feet. It really is amazing.
Now, does that kind of level of control actually translate on the soccer field in real play?
Well, I don't know about juggling a tennis ball, but certainly juggling a soccer ball is one of the early skills that most players as children learn. And the translation is you understand the touch of the ball. So whether you're touching a ball 5 or 10 feet to somebody, or whether you're hitting a ball 70 yards to somebody on the run, the more control you have of the ball, the more you better understand how hard to hit it, how to hit it, where to hit it, those sorts of things.
And really in soccer, you really do learn how to kick, don't you? I mean, because one of my favorite mixed martial arts fighters, we were talking to the break about it, and his name is Jose Aldo, Brazilian guy, but he's an incredible, devastating Muay Thai fighter as well. Of course, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, very high-level grappler. But, I mean, the guy has devastating leg kicks, because I've seen him. He kicked a soccer ball like at 100 yards or 70 yards, something like that, and he kicked it all the way across basketball field. He kicked the soccer ball all the way across the basketball field, and it landed in the hoop. He scored it in the hoop, a basketball hoop.
Yeah. Steph Curry just did that recently as well. But, it's funny. It's soccer players, if they're good at an early age, I mean, they can hit a ball, 40, 50, 60 yards. But if you watch English Premier League or some professional leagues, I mean, some of the goalkeepers are not a daily basis, every time they do a free kick, they're hitting the ball 70, 80 yards in the air. Some of the guys can really hit a ball.
I mean, that's amazing. My father actually loved soccer. We actually had a soccer team in Korea, a professional soccer team that he founded. But when you do that kick, I guess you call it a free kick, where you're kicking that ball all the way down the field, I noticed that they have this interesting step. They have a step up to the ball, and then they'll load their body and kick into it. And it's like that is such an important technique to develop like power through your kick.
Right. Well, as you're saying, even with jiu-jitsu or any technical sort of thing, there obviously is a technical way of hitting a ball that you get more distance, that, you either get too much loft or you hit it more directly, whether it be shooting on a goal from 30 or 40 yards out, or whether it be projecting it down the field 70 or 80 yards. So there's different ways of hitting the ball. But it's something that, some people are incredibly talented at it. And I had the honor and pleasure of being a family, an Irish family that played soccer. I was the youngest of 5 boys. All 5 of us were professional athletes, and I was just trying to keep up with everybody else.
Wow, so you have some really good genes. All the kids were professional athletes. Now, talk about how important that is for young people. In our community, we train them in mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and self-defense. We do a lot of self-defense, firearms training. We do Kali Eskrima, Filipino arts, etc. But this is so transformative to do these kind of athletics with the young people, and not only bond and become like a brotherhood, like a ninja brotherhood, but there's so much transformative power when you not only work mentally, but you also work physically together.
Agreed. And I think,
and of course,
I have a big a conference coming up in January in Philadelphia, where I'll be speaking about this, about soccer and emotional intelligence, where I use it not only just for soccer, but for other sports. But when we talk about emotional intelligence in young people, what we're doing, many parents, helicopter parents, are getting overly involved in youth sports. And rather than children having to sort of fight for their own space within their niche or within their group or their pack, parents are now influencing the pack and they're accusing coaches and accusing other adults, and somehow I think this influence is actually stealing
Right.
our growth of our children. And as you know, sports is such an incredible opportunity for children to find their own sense of strength, their own sense of personal power. And when you do that, what you do is you feel stronger. And I think certainly for young men in jiu-jitsu and martial arts is a wonderful way for young men to feel secure and strong about who they are. And soccer, obviously I love soccer, but through sport, I think that's what young men find is competing against each other. They get a better sense of who they are. And they also find out who they are in a pecking order, because obviously when you're competing against someone who is an incredible athlete, it doesn't detract from you. You can give someone respect for their incredible capabilities, but also give respect to yourself for being capable.
Right. You have all these wacky parents that are trying to say, give everybody a trophy. But when the whole thing about sports is to learn about competition and learn when you see somebody better than you, don't be envious and want to tear them down. Let it motivate you. Let it inspire you to step up your game and work harder.
Yep, exactly. No, I think that's exactly what sports teaches us. And we're taking away that lesson a little bit.
I mean, it's crazy when these teachers are trying to give all the students trophies just to make them feel good. I mean, sports is about, like you said, a pecking order, but that helps. It can be a very spiritual thing, and it can help you grow and help you learn that other people, you can learn through other people, and you can be motivated by other people. Like, you don't have to be perfect all the time, and you can seek mentorship, and you can seek to be around people who are better than you, and that only makes you better. I mean, I don't know why they're so afraid of that. They want to have like this sanitized, artificial, like no competition zone, which then disempowers kids from actually entering into the real world.
I love it. That disempowering piece. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think what they're doing is it's Kafkaesque, right? It's the opposite. They want to try and control. They want to control this world that they live in and influence everything. But at the very same time, what they're actually doing is they're actually stealing away their own independence and their ability to manage their own destiny.
I mean, how do you expect somebody to be successful or inspiring if everything before they do it, their parents are taking away the danger, taking away the risk, and allowing them to succeed, but they're really not succeeding because they're not fighting through it themselves. They're not learning the principles of overcoming through adversity and becoming stronger. I mean, I don't understand. Like you said, these helicopter parents, wow. This is a big problem even in East Asia, especially in the Korean and Chinese communities. Super helicopter moms that are like, driving their kids to go to school like 10 hours a day, but then they have to go to all these like extracurricular study activities, like hours and hours every day. Literally, some of the kids are working like 17 hours a day, just studying. And in the end, they're so burnt out, they can't do anything. They get these useless degrees from these overpaid, colleges that put them into debt. Yeah. And then they're just become disgruntled, and they become just it's almost like their life is sucked out of them.
Yeah, and it's an awful lot of pressure. And referring to sort of the Asian population, there was a woman in New York who was considered I guess sort of a tiger mom or something. And tiger it is mom, that nonstop pressure, on top of these kids to perform at high levels. However, when we see the kids, and look, you're a Harvard graduate, so I mean, the kids that are going to Harvard and Yale and going to the Ivy League schools, these are kids that not only excel in a classroom, but now it's like they play music, or they do chorus, or they have all sorts of levels of success at a high level. And these are kids that are 16, 17, 18 years old. It is a tremendous amount of pressure. And you're right. What's the burnout factor at some point? Kids have to be kids, and you have to allow them to grow on their own.
Oh, this is so important part, because there's different philosophies. And I want to get your take on this because you were a professional athlete. There's studies that have been done on, for example, like Olympic wrestling. You would think that if you start like those combat arts like very young, like at 4 or 5 years old, you'd get really good and you're going to be in the Olympics. But they found it's the opposite. It's the kids who start at like 12, 13, 14 are the ones that can get into the Olympics because they're not burning out. But the kids that their parents forced them at like 5 years old to do this stuff, especially if it's a really like kind of injury prone, athletics, well, then you're going to get tremendous burnout by the time they're teens, and they're no longer motivated to work at a high level because they've been forced into it too young.
Yeah. I think depending upon the sport, I wouldn't know enough about it, but look, when you talk about physical sports that maybe are, let's just call them violent for a lack of a better word, look, children don't mature physically until they're 13, 14, 15 years old, right? And that's the difference between,
Right.
like in soccer. In soccer, we have kids that play on co-ed teams until they're like 9, 10 or so, 11, where boys and girls can play together because boys haven't hit puberty, haven't grown physically in their strength. But if you were to have girls, there really wouldn't be much of a competition because boys finally kick in and become just stronger and faster, and it changes everything, right? But I think learning technique, we talked about a little bit earlier, learning technical skills at an early age so that they become ingrained before the physical component of it isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think when it becomes something like boxing or jiu-jitsu, where it's physical contact or it's hitting and whatever, I think the concept of being physically, let's just call it violent, or taking action like that, I think that could actually be more damaging than positive, because you're tapping into sort of aggression rather than a skill set, a mental, emotional skill set in order to become good at something. It's like playing chess, right? There's no violence associated with it. It's all strategic. And I think when we talk about soccer or tennis or golf, there's so many soft skills that you need to learn, and muscle memory, that once you've learned them, when your body kicks in and your physical body changes, hopefully the muscle memory is there and it doesn't change too much. Does that make sense?
It's very interesting because even in the jiu-jitsu world, we call jiu-jitsu the game of human chess, where your body is like the chess piece. But there is danger, you're right. There is a lot of danger involved in it. But, for example, like in the team sports, one thing I really value about playing team sports, I also played American football, and I really loved it. I loved football. But one thing I really loved about team sports is that you learn to play in a team, and that's very important too. I mean, one thing about martial arts, I think the downside to only doing martial arts is that everything is on you, and that's really good for accountability and responsibility and learning how to become mature, and you train under very honorable people and good masters, etc. But at the same time, team sports also has an important dynamic to teach young people that also you have to rely on other people in life, and you got to rely on a team to be successful, and that's really important.
Yeah, I think that is interesting. Individual sports such as jiu-jitsu, boxing, tennis, maybe even. I think. Well, let's go back to the jiu-jitsu and martial arts. I think the concept always has been, and whether it be a Bruce Lee or something like that, the sense of honor. I think that is one of the things that people accept with martial arts, is that there's a sense of a personal accountability and an honor, and everybody looks up to, whether it be a sensei or whether it be someone that runs a dojo that teaches honor and respect, not only for yourself but for other people. And I think that can't be overlooked, is that is an integral part of the education, is about honor and respect. And I think whether it be through American football or through soccer or basketball or other sports, I think we also learn about ourselves, we learn about others, but somehow in a competitive landscape, we become less concerned about respecting others. It becomes this sort of win at all costs sort of mentality. And some kids have it, some don't. Some kids don't have that sense of like win at all costs. Some kids just aren't like that.
I mean, just generally, athletics are so important because you have now this whole internet age where the young people are literally almost like walking zombies on the street. They're looking at their iPhones. They're not even communicating face to face anymore. They're more comfortable talking to a girl on the texting them, and they're sitting at a table together, texting each other. I mean, this level of human contact is just disappearing. And as kids get more detached from the world, and they get more sucked into these video games and these artificial realities, and AI is developing, and Alexa saying Jesus Christ is a fictional character, and all this insanity. It's like the young people need to move their body. Our bodies are not meant to be sedentary things, right? Our body needs to move, and we need to exercise and connect with other people who are living that healthy lifestyle. That's an important part of being motivated, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the interesting things is that this generation, what we're doing, once again, as parents, as educators, as teachers, as universities, we're empowering these young people by saying essentially that they're the first internet age, and therefore, like, they have all this power and all this ability. What we're essentially doing is, 2,000 years of excuse me, sort of working our asses off to get where we are. And what we've essentially done is given this generation, these millennials, we've given them the keys to the Rolls Royce and said, hey, listen, go ahead and take a joyride, do whatever the hell you want with it, and go bang it up, because you guys are the future. This is the internet, and we're not being responsible as adults. We know. Get out of the house. Go act physically and go use your body and take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. All those things have to be done together. And what we're doing is we seem to be empowering kids to just sit on their phones, on their computers, and saying somehow like, oh yeah, no, it's the future. No, it's not. It is, I think it is literally destroying our next generation.
I mean, that's so true. Like, I feel literally if I had to sit and play video games, that would literally be like torture to me. To sit in front of a screen and play video games all day, that would literally be torture. That would be the hell. That would be hell for me. I mean, because I've always been active. I've always been moving around. I like moving my body. It just feels great. It just, you get the surge of energy, and your hormones and chemicals are moving. Your blood is moving, pumping through your body. I mean, you just feel alive. You're breathing fresh air. It's like, it's so healthy and so alive. So like all my kids, we've been training with them for a young age, and at least been, running around and wrestling with them. And like, that's such an important part of like just a family, to be engaged together, training and working out together, whatever the sport may be, but you're engaged in it together, and your kids are not just becoming vegetables.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's funny that, coming into the holiday season, right? Everyone's trying to sell their products. And there's an interesting commercial out there. You brought up a young man, maybe like, figuring out how to ask out a girl or whatever. There's literally actually, there's two commercials. One is with a man who is interviewing a guy for a job. And the other one is actually a dad asking him like why he deserves to take his daughter out. And in both instances, it's about selling software. And the kid gives they give this mental image or this mental imagery or his reference point. And when the father said, well, are you responsible? And the kid actually has a thought about a video game, how he's been responsible in a video game. And another example when he's taken on a challenge and he refers to the video game. And it's really funny that's the reference point. And what I'm afraid of is, to our conversation, is that somehow kids actually think that because they've done it on a computer in this animated world, somehow that is an integral part of who they are. And it's like, no, it isn't. That didn't happen in reality. It happened on a TV or in this cyber world. You didn't actually do it. It's not a part of who you are. It was part of the game. And we're not making that connection, which is dangerous.
I mean, that's an amazing point, because it's like, well, Kevin, you did not, I did everything you did because I played in a video game. I was a professional soccer player. That is ludicrous. It's like all the hard work, the sweat, the blood, sweat, and tears, the injuries, all the pain, all the coaches like beating on you every day, like go, go, go. I mean, they didn't pay any of that, and they want to play a video game and claim that they have that legitimate title. It is incredible.
Pretty much.
I mean, it's almost like a mental disease. It's almost, I just feel this whole AI thing, they call it smart technology. It actually makes people more dumb. Like you're talking about EQ, IQ, it reduces our ability to connect with other people. I mean, they're calling it social media to connect with everybody in the world, but you can't connect with actual people.
Agreed.
I mean, how important your new book is going to talk about emotional intelligence, IQ quotient, intelligence quotient, the multidimensional hierarchy of needs. Can you tell us a little about how important that EQ is in that hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, it's something that I find fascinating, and Daniel Goleman's creation of this emotional intelligence, EQ, for the past 15, 20 years, he's been talking about, writing about it. I think it's probably one of the most fascinating and important findings really in human history, because everybody thinks about kids going to college and being intelligent and having a high IQ, and we've talked about it for years. But every single human being is born with this sense of EQ, this emotional intelligence, and this ability to adapt in circumstances and be a chameleon, to be able to adjust to different environments and different cultures and different situations. And we're not enhancing it. To some degree, we're trying to control it. And by controlling it, we're actually stealing our children's abilities to learn that, to learn to be dependent upon themselves and their own intuition, their own intelligence, their own emotional intelligence. We're trying to control that environment. And in my first book, Who Are You?, I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I introduced the 21st century multidimensional hierarchy of needs. And Maslow's fascinating study is about the human needs, and that there's stages of human needs. So the top of the pyramid in Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization, becoming essentially your very best self. So when we take a look at that idea of the multiple dimensional components of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we introduce EQ to that, it really becomes, I think, talking about becoming a whole human being in every aspect, physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. All of those things are all acting and adapting at the same level.
Wow, it's like amazing, because even if you, I don't know if you're married or not, but when I speak with my wife, or if I have to, we're talking about serious talk or something, she's going to be reading my face, she's going to be reading my posture. She's going to be reading, like, am I sincere about apology, or am I sincere about what I'm saying? It's like kids are losing this because everything's in a game world. In the digital reality, where you don't have to deal with another physical person, even social media, you're not dealing with an actual person. So you're not getting all these sociological cues that you're supposed to be picking up, like growing up around the fireplace, or in these tribes. You're always dealing with people, you're always dealing with relationships and extended families. And it seems like in the West, we're losing that. We're becoming like these nuclearized families. Many times we're divided families, many times we're divorced families. But we're losing the sense of this extended family, like where we're living with our grandpa and grandma, we're living with our aunts and uncles. Like, at least in Korea, that's like still quite normal for families to live as an extended family. Even myself, we live in a very large extended family. And we found that for our kids, it's so healthy, because they get to learn how to deal with senior people, younger people, cousins, you know what I mean? And it's like they deal in relationships, and they have to learn this emotional quotient as well.
Yeah, I love it. That's perfect. That's exactly it. The sense of this nuclear family, these smaller and smaller families with one child here, one child there, and then with divorces and multiple people. I think, to your point, the extended family, having grandparents and grandparents' influences on children or grandchildren, I think is enormous.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it happens around most of the world has that influence. I think we're moving further and further away from it, and we're trying to create these perfect little worlds for our kids and give them everything. And I think it actually works in reverse.
I'm sure. I mean, traditionally, the Irish families, right? Really big extended families living together.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, because I think people are missing out when they're only living, like, even with, there's even like psychological studies, like Peterson was saying, or Camille Paglia, who's out here in Philadelphia, I believe. She was speaking about, Dr. Paglia was talking about, she doesn't believe that the nuclear family is actually how we're meant to live as human beings, and that we've always evolved microevolutionarily in tribes and in a culture where we have a lot of different social interaction, and that just develops our social intelligence, emotional intelligence. And it's like so important to like be able to deal with grandpa and grandma in a respectful and loving way, and see their value, and not just like make fun of people because they're old, old fogies. I hate this culture. Like, you have this young people like just making fun of old people because they're old. Hello, you bums, you're gonna grow old too. What you gonna do then?
No, I agree with you. And that's, I refer to a lot this idea that we're a pack, like we're pack animals. And that is a part of our nature. It's a part of who and what we are. We are still an animal in our genetics. And, as much as we want to remove ourselves from that, I think you're right. We belong in packs because that's where we operate and we function, I think, best. So in that idea of an extended family with groups of people around, all are contributing to your growth. But you're right. You get to deal with aunts and uncles and grandparents and other extended people that aren't your parents directly, saying, hey, that's not acceptable. Hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Hey, don't do that to your sister or to your cousin or to another adult. Hey, you should respect your parents, or hey, you should respect your grandparents, then go pick up their plate or go wash their dishes, or hey, go to their house and help them clean their yard, or those sorts of empathetic sorts of things. I don't think kids are learning those the way they should. I agree with you.
Well, it's been such a great honor. I can't believe an hour went by that fast.
Wow.
If you could just kind of condense it down to what would be your secret to staying motivated each day and being inspired every day.
Well, I think it's about how you wake up. Every single morning you have the opportunity to wake up, and I think it's about affirmations, about saying something positive to yourself. But I think for all of us, once again, 96% of the population of the world believes in God. And I think if we all truly believe that we're children of God, when you wake up in the morning, it's an opportunity to thank God for the opportunity to be here, to influence the world, to take these amazing gifts that God has given us as individuals, and to be able to live our lives. And thank God, being in America, to have the freedom of being able to get up every morning, to go to a job, to go help someone in a community, to use your God-given skills and abilities to make this world a better place, and to help raise your children, and to do the things that you want to do. And I think that's the thing every single day, to feel motivated, inspired, and to live an inspired life through the eyes of God, and be thankful for what it is that we're given, because we have been given so much, and we're so blessed in this country. And I think we're still the greatest country in the world. We need to remember that. And I think that's what Motivate America is about. That's what National Motivation and Inspiration Day is about. That's what I'm about, is giving thanks and being thankful for all the blessings that we have, certainly coming into the end of the year and the holiday season and Christmas.
Wow, that was beautiful. Kevin, just let everybody know about your websites, where they can find more about you, also your books, where they can get your book online, etc.
So that's the best place to go, is just go to kevinmccrudden.com. So it's www.kevinmccrudden.com. And from there, you can get links to Motivate America, the American Motivation Awards, National Motivation and Inspiration Day, which is January 2nd of every year. And you can also get access to all of my books and audio books at that site at www.kevinmccrudden.com.
You heard it, folks. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us this morning. It's been truly motivational and inspirational to meet you, my friend, and to speak with you. Also, all of you joining us for the broadcast. We're going to be signing off. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp on the King's Report. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come. All right. Thank you, Mr.